Monara and I, welcome back. We are in chapter 28. Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. We are starting today from verse 29. Chapter 29's next, and we're actually almost at the end of Canto 4. There's only 31 chapters, so in the final haul. But anyways, verse 29. It was fixed that Vaidarbi, daughter of King Vidarbha, was to be married to a very powerful man, Malayadavaja, an inhabitant of the Pandu country. After conquering other princes, he married the daughter of King Vidarbha. The king fathered one daughter, who had very black eyes. He also had 7 sons, who later became rulers of that tract of land known as Dravida. Thus there were 7 kings in that land. The sons of the king gave birth to many thousands and thousands of sons, and all of these have been protecting the entire world up to the end of one Manu's lifespan and even afterwards. The great sage named Agastya married the firstborn daughter of the king. From her, one son was born, whose name was Dridhatsyuta, and from him another son was born, whose name was Idhimavadya. After this, the great saintly king divided his entire kingdom among his sons. Then, in order to worship Lord Krishna with full attention, he went to a solitary place known as Kulakala. Just as the moonshine follows the moon at night, immediately after the king departed for Kulakala, his devoted wife, whose eyes were very enchanting, followed him, giving up all homely happiness despite family and children. In the province of Kulakala there were rivers named Kadravasa, Tamraparni, and Vatodaka. The king used to go to those pious rivers regularly and take his bath there. Thus he purified himself externally and internally. He took his bath and ate bulbs, seeds, leaves, flowers, roots, fruits, and grasses, and drank water. In this way he underwent severe austerities. Eventually he became very skinny. Through austerity, the king in body and mind gradually became equal to the dualities of cold and heat, happiness and distress, wind and rain, hunger and thirst, the pleasant and the unpleasant. In this way he conquered all relativities. By worshipping, executing austerities, and following the regulated principles, the king conquered his senses, his life, and his consciousness. Thus he fixed everything on the central point of the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. In this way he stayed immovable in one place for 100 years by the calculation of the demigods. After this time he developed pure devotional attraction for Krishna and remained fixed in that position. The king attained perfect knowledge by being able to distinguish the supersoul from the individual soul. The individual soul is localized, whereas the supersoul is all-pervasive. He became perfect in knowledge that the material body is not the soul, but that the soul is the witness of the material body. In this way, the king attained perfect knowledge because in his pure state he was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By means of such enlightening transcendental knowledge, he could understand everything from all angles of vision. King Malayadavaja could thus observe that the Supersoul was sitting by his side, and that he, as the individual soul, was sitting by the side of the Supersoul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interests, thus he ceased from such activities. The daughter of King Vidarbha accepted her husband, all in all, as the supreme. She gave up all sensual enjoyment, and in complete renunciation followed the principles of her husband, who was so advanced. Thus she remained engaged in his service. The daughter of King Vidarbha wore old garments, and she was lean and thin because of her vows of austerity. Since she did not arrange her hair, it became entangled and twisted in locks. Although she remained always near her husband, she was as silent and unagitated as the flame of an undisturbed fire. The daughter of King Vidarbha continued as usual to serve her husband, who was seated in a steady posture, until she could ascertain that he had passed away from the body. While she was serving her husband by massaging his legs, she could feel that his feet were no longer warm, and thus understood that he had already passed from the body. She felt great anxiety upon being left alone. Bereft of her husband's company, she felt exactly as the deer feels upon being separated from its mate. Being now alone, and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts, and crying very loudly, "O best of the kings, please get up, get up! Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her." The most obedient wife thus fell down at the feet of her dead husband and began to cry pitifully in that solitary forest. Thus the tears rolled down from her eyes. She then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. One Brahmana, who was an old friend of King Puranjana, came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. The Brahmana inquired as follows, "Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who is the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. My dear friend, you are now my very same friend. Since you left me, you have become more and more materialistic, and not seeing me, you have been traveling in different forms throughout this material world, which was created by some woman. In that city there is 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is lord of the house. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the life air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and 5 senses. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. And they transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you became overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man your well-wishing husband. Nor were you the actual husband of Puranjana. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now, just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. My dear friend, I, the supersoul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are quantitatively not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually advanced scholars, who are in knowledge, do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see 2 bodies, so in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. In this way, both swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction. The great sage Narada continued his narration. My dear King Prasanabhati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus I have described the story of Puranjana to you. Actually, it is instruction for self-realization. Thus ends chapter 28, and I apologize for the verging on the voice of Yoda. I just say something and it just comes out randomly. Obviously, that was a story of self-realization. So I'm going to open the floor on this video and say, please put in the comments any thoughts you have. I say this all the time, and I know it's super repetitive, but basically I'm continually reminding you not to be afraid, speak your mind, say what you want. Let's start a conversation, and let's see where it goes. I don't have any direct comments on this chapter. I feel like we've kind of heard a lot of this before, and it's just a very basic story. So next time we will start up in chapter 29 and make our way to the end of Canto 4. So until then, thank you so much for hanging with me and listening to this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.